So the warm-up is a little brain activity, all right? So check this out. We got the sound right now.
Pay attention. This is a test. Try to count the number of footballs, like this one, as they fly across the screen. You have 10 seconds. Ready? Go. Did you count all 27 footballs? It's not easy.
Now, were you able to count the 27 footballs?
I thought I counted 29.
You counted 29?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. All right, let's see.
Thing is, you didn't need to count any of them to get the right answer. Want to find out why? How could you possibly know the number of footballs without counting them?
Now, they said that you could have known the answer of how many footballs went past without even counting them. How do you think they did that?
I don't know.
All right, pay attention, watch this.
Because the answer was hidden in plain sight, right on the scoreboard.
Oh.
While you were focused on what your brain thought was important, counting the footballs, you missed some vital information.
And see, that's just like, it's similar to misdirection, all right? They call this unintentional blindness, okay? Because you're so focused on, you know, one thing that you're not paying attention to what's going on, all right? So here we go, here's another.
The brain is constantly bombarded by far more information than it can handle. If we tried to process all of it, we'd be completely paralyzed. As a result, we have to attend to only a small part of what's in front of us at any given moment. Sometimes attention can fail and we lose focus. This is what happens in what we call inattentional blindness.
Pay attention. You're about to be tested. For this game, you get to be the referee and judge whether the kicker is able to put the football between those two yellow uprights, 20 yards away. Tracking a small moving object at a distance.
Now, the object of this game is to determine whether or not the ball goes through the uprights, all right? So here we go, let's play, let's see what you see.
So watch the ball closely. So, was the field goal good or not? As the replay shows, it's good. Pretty easy, right? But while you were watching the kick, did you happen to notice which cheerleaders took off their tops?
No.
If you're looking for the rewind button, don't worry. We'll do it for you. Yep, there they are. While you were zeroed in on the kick, you missed 3 cheerleaders stripping down at the bottom of the screen. Don't be surprised if you missed it. We took advantage of a loophole in your brain. If you could rewind real life, you'd be shocked at how often inattentional blindness causes you to miss things happening right in front of your eyes. For example, have you ever pulled into your driveway and realized,
And this is the thing, they've studied the brain and how it works, and how it functions. So they know how to manipulate us better, all right? Now, here's another one. This is the last
to put your attentional spotlight to the ultimate test, we've brought in deception specialist Apollo Robbins to really mess with your head.
Most people think everything you see is within your field of vision. But actually, your attentional spotlight is only the size of your fingernail. That means it's 1/1000th of your field of view. But I'll give you a fair chance. I'll use something larger, like a playing card.
Apollo is a master at misdirecting your attention. No matter how closely you watch him, he still might fool you.
Your name, sir? Rudd. Rudd? Rudd. Okay. Rudd, Coco, here we go.
To begin, Apollo chooses the ace of hearts at random and has one of our subjects write her name on it, so he can't simply swap in a duplicate card. Now watch closely.
Here we go. We'll just put this inside. Rudd, try to keep an eye on this for me. Just use your right hand. Put your hand on top there. Is that it? It's not it, is it?
Nope. Rudd is looking for the ace he thinks is in the deck.
Now, Rudd, lift your hand up. Is it that second card right here? Nope. No. You're a keen observer, Rudd. Was it either of those two? Nope.
Have you spotted the ace yet?
Marked card on the back.
There it is. But this guy still hasn't seen it.
Rudd, we'll keep doing this till you get it. Eventually, I'm sure you will. Was that either of those two? Nope. Nope. Okay.
It's because his brain's attentional spotlight can only focus on the cards right in front of him. Even though the ace is in his field of vision, his brain doesn't see it until now.
Oh, there we go.
So how quickly did you see the ace? Did you catch Apollo sticking it to his forehead at the very beginning of the trick?
Now, did you see when he first put it up there?
Nah.
Right. Because you were focused on looking at the cards. Yeah. All right. In this system, I mean, for years they've been studying the brain. Okay. So they know the ins and outs of how the brain functions. All right. Now, let's switch up a little bit. Because before we really talk about division, I want to address something that I think is kind of important, especially right now. But let me show you this. Kids and computers, when is it too much? All right? But listen to this.
Are kids these days too dependent on technology? Everywhere you look, there are children with cell phones, little ones with tablets, even tweens with laptops. Is it starting to become overkill? We figured we just had to ask this question after the picture you see here went viral. It was written by a 7-year-old who apparently demanded unrestricted internet access from her parents. It reads, "If you put a password on that, I will make your life a nightmare." The spelling, as you see, not perfect, but her message is clear, and we're not sure what to make of that. But it does bring up a larger issue. Are kids spending too much time on the computer, dependent on it, and not enough time outside or pursuing other interests?
Former Arizona Attorney General Grant Woods, our guest today. You have an 8-year-old in your house.
Yeah.
Would you allow your 8-year-old to use a crayon to tell you off?
If she wanted her butt whipped, I mean, that'd be the end of her cell phone days or anything. I mean, that's a joke. I mean, it's just the disrespect. And, you kidding me? I
you
mean,
can't even spell, but you're going to tell your parents, you know?
yeah, they ought to take the phone away and work on the spelling.
Yeah.
She's missed a few sessions, I think.
It's one of those things. I know Sean, and we debated this. I have 7-year-olds, and I'm telling you, my daughters know better than to come at us like that. They're always like, "What's your password?" I'm telling her password.
Yeah. But, on the other hand, there's a respect issue, and do they have too much technology? Yeah, a lot of kids do. It's up to the parents to decide when you're going to give them this technology or that technology, but having said that, you can't ignore it. I mean, they need to be proficient on computers, and they're going to want to be able to have their music and things like that. I don't think that means that necessarily they need to be texting when they're 7, 8, 9 years old, but you have to figure that out. And there's a lot of peer pressure and a lot of pressure because the other kids have it on the parents. How come you're being the loser parents who won't let me do that? But at the end of the day, you got to be the parent, not the friend.
Yeah, let me tell you, if I got that note from my daughter when she was 7, she would have zero access to the internet.
That's an easy answer there. You just take it away.
Right.
Really.
Absolutely. You got to stop it. I know there's a lot of people who are saying, "Oh, it's funny. It's a sense of humor. She's being cute." But if they allow her to get away with it at this age, what are the letters going to be at 13, at 14, at 15? What are they going to be saying then? Death threats.
Anyone who's had teenagers, I've had my share.
It gets worse.
Yeah, it ain't gonna get better. This is the cute age.
Yes. The cute age. Yeah, they're doing their ABDs. Here's what you're saying on Facebook. Chris Martinez writes, "Are kids these days too wrapped up in technology?" Said the person who hasn't heard of China or Japan.
Angie Pregram says, "My kids are only allowed 20 minutes a day on the computer, and the TV is only 1 hour a day."
Nicole Threadgall, that 7-year-old needs to spend more time practicing spelling and handwriting rather than being on a computer.
Exactly. H.R. Hamada says, after a threat like that, she deserves to lose TV, radio, phone, and the internet.
Yeah, I do think that, like you said, they need to be proficient, but when it gets into sassing, I don't know. All right, we're going to stay on this theme, though, of technology and kids for just a tad bit longer.
Now, the thing is that kids are becoming so addicted to technology that now they're calling it digital heroin. Okay? Because the addiction is that bad. But not only the kids, we're addicted to it too. Okay? But now watch this. All right? This is a piece talking about digital heroin, technology being like a drug. All right?
Well, it's a petrifying digital warning that every parent needs to hear. If you think your kids are addicted to their screens, you might be right. New research suggests now that technology is like digital heroin.
Okay, you got my attention. And they say that reliance on screens like that can damage the developing brain of a child the same way that drug addiction can. On the left, a brain scan of a drug addict, and on the right, a digital addict. So how do we fix this before it becomes a problem?
Dr. Nicholas Kardaras is an addiction expert and the author of Glow Kids, and he joins us now. Good morning. So you wrote a book about this.
Yes.
What do parents need to be worried or concerned about here?
I think it's a significant concern that I tried to write a book that really sort of gave parents the research, because I think a lot of parents intuitively understood that kids staring at glowing screens, and we've seen it. I think any of us that have lived on the planet for the last 10 years have seen the Glow Kids spreading. And I think a lot of parents had an intuitive sense that this might be a problem, but now we have both clinical and neurological brain imaging research, over 200 peer-reviewed studies that show that this has an addictive-like effect on a child.
Okay, word to the control room. If we could put up this brain scan screen again, just so that we can see what you're talking about.
Sure.
Explain what you're, okay, the person on the left is a drug addict.
Is an opiate addict. So that's a fractional anisotropy scan. It's diffuse tensor imaging MRIs. So just to kind of
try to make it as simple as possible.
Not to get too technical. What we're seeing is that we're seeing microstructural abnormalities that mirror drug addiction on the frontal cortex. So what we're seeing is
and the frontal cortex is
executive functioning, and it controls impulse control, and it correlates with ADHD and addiction.
All right, so when does it develop fully? When can we let our kids see our electronics or TV?
So the frontal cortex fully develops in their early 20s, but we know that as kids get older, they're more equipped to be able to handle what we call hyper-stimulating, hyper-arousing screens. It's clear that people that have been exposed to excessive, and I want to qualify by saying excessive screen usage meet all diagnostic criteria for behavioral addictions.
Right.
We know that addiction doesn't just mean substance addiction. It's not just drugs and alcohol, but people can be addicted to sex, and people can be addicted to gambling.
But no parent can wait 20 years. I mean, we're not going to wait 20 years to give our kid an iPad.
Well, Steve Jobs waited 10 years. I mean,
10 years, so
Steve
10 is more
Jobs
reasonable.
didn't let it.
And listen to what he's saying. He said Steve Jobs. He wouldn't let his kids use it. But yet, he's created it for everybody else.
He's selling them, Jones.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he was selling them.
Our recommendation, and the research seems to show, is at least out of elementary school, that a child that's 8, 9, or 10 years old isn't neurologically equipped to handle such a stimulating, immersive product. We're just not made for it yet. There was one research study that showed that screens are as dopamine activating, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that relates to addiction. They're as dopamine activating as sex. Do we want a 7-year-old having a digital orgasm? And that's how stimulating they are to a child.
Right, and you're talking about how when you play a game, you are constantly being stimulated because you want to get to the next level, and that's where the dopamine comes from. Not everybody agrees with you, Doctor. From The Verge, take a look at this quote. We've seen this form of scaremongering before. People are frequently uneasy with new technology. After all, the problem is screens and computers aren't actually all that new. It's not the screen per se, it's the stimulation of what you do with the screen, right?
But I mean, you got to think about it. We're driving, and we're on the phone, texting, while we're driving. And how dangerous that is, but yet we still do it because it's a drug. It's like a drug. We're addicted to it.
I write about in my book that Plato was against the written word. Plato thought that writing would erode our memory because back then they used to do oral storytelling. I get it. I'm a kid that was raised in the 70s on Pac-Man, so I'm not anti-technology. I've got my smartphone, but we're seeing that this generation of technology is qualitatively different than prior technologies, and we're seeing, and primarily because of the interactive and immersive nature of it. So I'm not trying to be Chicken Little and say the sky's falling. I'm just trying to give parents the information that there are some potential clinical disorders that excessive screen usage can lead to, and the research is clear on that.
My doctor said 2 years. My little girl was born 10 months ago, and he said, don't give her any iPads, no TV, nothing for 2 years. That's kind of the standard, what we hear.
Basically, the American Academy of Pediatrics is to recommend no screen time 2 or under. But again, what I can say is that Steve Jobs didn't let his kids have technology that the top Yahoo and Silicon Valley engineers put their kids in non-tech Waldorf school.
They put their kids in what they call Waldorf schools, where they don't use any technology.
They want to keep that creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like the schools we used to have.
Right.
Years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So they put their kids in private schools where they don't have access.
What's the name of this kind of school?
He said a Waldorf school. It's probably like a kind of
homeschool,
like a school back in the day.
It's just a school. They don't use any technology or anything, but it's like a private school. Probably costs a lot of money to go there.
Chalkboards and crayons.
Waldorf.
Waldorf.
Let me see.
So if the tech people are putting their kids in there. But again, what I could say is that Steve Jobs didn't let his kids have technology that the top Yahoo and Silicon Valley engineers put their kids in non-tech Waldorf schools. So if the tech people are putting their kids in non-tech elementary schools, that should tell us something also.
So kids, go out and play. Go outside like we all used to do. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great, thank you.
His new book is called Glow Kids, something to think about.
But that's just like the entertainers who don't let their children watch television.
Right.
Because they know what it is. They know the dangers of television, okay? And how it programs the mind, okay? But now, here's another clip talking about this digital heroin.
So I want to talk about something that is far too common. When we started hosting the show, there was no such thing as smartphones, was there? I don't even think they were out yet. Were they 9 years ago?
Yes.
Were they? I didn't have one yet, I don't think. But things like iPads and tablets weren't really. Right. Remember when we started the show? We carried around 3-ring binders for every show. Because
maybe for the first year.
We obviously want to learn about our guests. I know every single thing about all of you. Where you shop. But we used to carry around these 3-ring binders with all of the information of guests who were appearing on the show, etc. Well, I think it was in season 2 when
we got the iPad, yes.
What this is all leading to is this digital heroin? Because what we're finding with kids is kids who overuse these digital devices, it has a drug-like effect directly on their brains, in particular this frontal cortex, which is involved with impulse control, and that literally, we've all seen it. A kid is sitting there staring at their tablet, and they look like they're on heroin.
And the thing is, I've witnessed this myself. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting in the computer lab with the kids, and it's time for them to go back to their class, or I'm asking them a question. I'm tapping them, and they won't respond. Mm-hmm. Almost like they're zombies. Mm-hmm. And it takes a while for me to get their attention. I gotta take the mouse and click the screen off.
Dang.
Okay, but it's that bad. It's that bad.
And you push them, you yell in their ear, and they're still tuned out.
I literally saw a kid in a restaurant the other day, and he was like this, like shaking it. I don't know if he was playing something or what, but
it's that game where you gotta move it to. I don't play video games, but I've seen people do it.
Yeah, and I just have to say, this is a real addiction. This is very much something that people are starting to get addicted to. People have withdrawals. If someone leaves their phone or tablet at home, it's literally like they can't find their child. right?
So how do you prevent a kid from becoming addicted? And then if they are addicted, because I know parents out there are watching right now, probably parents in the audience who have kids who truly are addicted, how do you get them to go through a digital detox so that they can overcome this legit affliction?
Well, literally, it is like a detox. So part of what needs to happen is that they need to be removed from their devices. And it needs to be for long periods of time. And so what I always recommend parents do is create rules for the devices. So I'm not talking about if they're doing homework, but I'm talking about playtime.
Right.
So it should be that it's about an hour to 2 hours a day, depending if it's a weekend or a weekday, and that they aren't feeling like they can't go anywhere without it. I understand that a lot of parents now are taking kids with their tablets to a restaurant so that they can eat their meal in peace. Well, no, you have to do exactly what I did, which is entertain your kid and then bribe them with a lollipop to be quiet. Okay, maybe not a lollipop.
Well, you see that everywhere, parents using
It's their babysitter.
the pad or the smartphone to babysit them, whether it be in a restaurant, on the
We're guilty too, adults. We all have become a bit addicted to these, and so it just goes to show how easily it is to become an addict to almost anything.
Now, the thing is, what we got to really realize is why is the system doing this? If you think about it, all the time that we're spending on these phones and on the computer and all of that stuff, we're giving up information. And they're taking this information and they're putting it in a database. And the thing is that they want to use that just in case. They want to have that just in case you step out of line. Okay? Because remember we talked about COINTELPRO, right? And how they had infiltrated the groups back in the 60s and 70s. And the purpose was to do what? What did the FBI say that the purpose was?
To prevent a black messiah.
To prevent the rise of a black messiah. Okay? This is how they do this. Because if I have all of your information, I can blackmail you at any time.
Yes. Right.
Okay? So that's one of the purposes of this. All right? But now, we've seen that. But now let's look at the designers. Okay? And let's look at what the designers had to say about social media. Okay? This was called How Your Brain is Getting Hacked. All right, but listen to these guys because
we want to psychologically figure out how to manipulate you as fast as possible and then give you back that dopamine hit. We did that brilliantly at Facebook. Instagram has done it. WhatsApp has done it. Snapchat has done it. Twitter has done it.
Tell us I love that analogy you made on 60 Minutes about the slot machine.
Yeah.
That the phone is really a slot machine, and every time people are checking, they want to get some sort of boost.
I mean, it's built into our brains a variable schedule reward. So if you pull a lever and sometimes you get a reward and sometimes you don't, sometimes you get a reward like you're invited to the Bill Maher show, and sometimes you pull your lever and you get a newsletter on an email you want to throw away, it makes it addictive. And so everything about our phone accidentally becomes a slot machine because it could be a text message from someone you love or it could be nothing. But the more frequently it buzzes, the more it conditions us to check more. And so it's obviously leading to these kind of addictive problems that everybody feels.
Right.
And see, what it does is it's filling the void, everyone's void for attention. Okay, a lot of people want attention, but that phone that provides it, you hear that ding, oh, somebody didn't text me. Somebody called me,
Thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, to really understand it. That thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
What are some examples of, apps that people use on a pretty regular basis, and the ways that these companies are drawing this in?
Have you noticed, if you ever log into Twitter, as an example, so there's an extra delay that you don't know how long it's going to take. It's between 2 and 3 seconds, where the number of new notifications on Twitter you have. So why is that there? Well, it makes that into what's called a variable schedule reward. It's like a slot machine. So you're playing the slot machine, and there's a time delay, and in that time delay, your anticipation's building, and then you get to see how many notifications I get. And so you become more addicted to checking it again the next time.
That's your real point, is that these companies, and that's what I was saying in this essay a couple of weeks ago, is that companies, just like the tobacco companies, just like food companies, it's not enough that we just like the product. We have to be addicted to it, and that is something kind of evil.
Well, and the reason, though, that this we need you to use it as much as possible thing comes from is because of the attention economy. There's only so much attention.
The attention economy, right.
Because when information gets abundant, the only thing that's left is attention gets scarce, because there's only our lives to fit it inside of. So then it becomes hyper-competitive.
And the reason people are stupider, to your point, is because they don't read anymore. And the reason they don't read, there's no time.
Yeah.
Because they're doing this bullshit.
Think about it.